Okay, guys, welcome back to the KJ Methods YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be doing the practice of real estate part 3. If you've missed 1 and 2, as well as our contract series and our agency series, please go back and watch those. I'm KJ, and I run this channel called the KJ Method. I'm a real estate attorney as well as a pre-licensed instructor, and I'm dedicating myself to helping 1,000 agents pass the real estate exam before December 2025. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. What we've been doing are these test questions, and I've been working through them with you to make certain that you totally understand the material. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 21. The federal do not call registry would allow an agent to call A former client only if not listed on the registry for up to 18 months. B, a former client listed on the registry for up to 18 months. C, a former contact only if not listed on the registry for up to 12 months. Or D, a former contact only if not listed on the registry for up to 3 months. Ew, that was a mouthful. So what do you think? Well, we know that you are allowed to call a former client or a former contact. A former client up to 18 months, former contact up to 3 months. But what gets you here is that it doesn't matter if they're on the registry or not. And so the only one that says that they could be listed or not listed, right, on the registry. So if they're listed on the registry, you can still call them until they tell you to no longer call. If you notice, A, C, and D say that you can only call them if they're not listed on the registry, and that is not true. Even if they're on the registry, you can call them. But if you're a client, you can only call if they're a former client, you can call for up to 18 months, former contact up to 3 months. Number 22, which scenario would be entitled to an exemption under federal fair housing law? If you've been watching along, you know that federal fair housing has these protected classes, but there are some exemptions when you can discriminate against a person under fair housing, even if they're in a protected class. So the answer is A, Sally refuses to rent a room in her home to a lesbian female. B, John refuses to rent an apartment to his 5-family dwelling, to a family. C, a single family homeowner with a broker refuses to sell her property to a transgender person. Or D, a private club refuses to rent a room to a non-member who is a woman. Listen, real easy. The first thing that I want you to do is look for who would be in a protected class. Because if there wouldn't be in a protected class, then this is not even going to apply at all, because fair housing would not apply in that situation. So the first thing I want you to do is look for who is in a protected class. And if you can do that, then the answer becomes real easy, that it's a private club who refuses to rent a room to a non-member who is a woman. Why is that the case? Because under A, lesbian female not protected under the fair housing law. All right. B, John refuses to rent an apartment in his 5-family dwelling. 5-family is commercial. So no, it's not even going to come under this law such that we would need an exemption. C, you see transgender. Transgender has no protection at all. So immediately throw out, if you know the categories of fair housing, right? Family, race, sex, handicap, color, national origin, and religion. If you know those, then automatically throw out whoever is not in those categories. Last one is D. If you are a private club and you refuse to rent a room to a non-member that is a woman, that is not, you're going to have an exemption in order to do that, as long as they will allow this woman to congregate in the private club. So the rule is this. I know this one's taking a little longer. The rule is this. If it's a private club or religious organization, they can discriminate as long as they don't discriminate in their membership. Okay? And so a private club can say no women, no women. Women are protected under fair housing. They can say no women as long as if that woman wanted to go into the club, okay, they won't rent a room to her, but if she wanted to go into the club, she would be able to go into the club. Sorry for that long explanation, but it is really important that you understand fair housing and the exemptions. Students get confused with the exemptions all the time. 23, John is blind and wants to become an Uber driver. Uber refuses to hire him for that position due to his handicap. John sues. What is the probable result? This one should be fast, right? Because it comes under the ADA. And so let's see what it says. A, Uber will lose because discrimination against the handicap is not permitted. B, Uber will lose unless it can find another position that John can do at Uber. C, Uber will win since John is mentally impaired. D, Uber will win because the ADA only requires reasonable accommodation. And that is going to be your answer, D. What do I mean by that? Yes, a person coming for a job who is mentally or physically handicapped, you have got to allow them to do the job if the job can be done with reasonable accommodations. With respect to an Uber driving and the person is blind, he's not going to be able to see. There's nothing that you could do reasonably to allow them to drive that Uber. So in that case, you do not have to. 24, federal fair housing prohibits discrimination based on, well, do you know your protected categories? Race, A, B, sexual orientation, C, marital status, D, age. Which one does it prevent discrimination based on? You should have picked race immediately. Federal fair housing does not protect sexual orientation, it does not protect marital status, and it does not protect age of adults. It only protects children, okay? Only based on children. So we don't call it age, we call it family, all right? But please note, B, C, and D are all protected under what we are going to call later ECOA, which is the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. 25, a mortgage broker contacts a bank on behalf of his client who is perfect by all banking standards. Perfect. The bank, however, refuses to look at the client's credit profile, stating that the zip code where the property is located has a high percentage of crime and property values. Due to the increased risk, the bank's policy is that it doesn't loan in that area. This is an example of what? This you got to know off the top of your head. What does a bank get involved in and they're not allowed to get involved in? This is definition, so you should be thinking redlining. A, blockbusting, but it would be legal in this circumstance. B, redlining, and it is never legal. C, redlining, but it is legal here due to the bank's increased risk. Since they have increased risk, it's going to be okay. And D, blockbusting, and it is never legal. You should be able to get rid of A, get rid of D immediately. You're left with B and C, redlining, and redlining is going to be never legal. All right, never legal. Okay, 26. A licensee plans to send out an email offering his services. According to the CAN-SPAM Act, the licensee must A, include only the brokerage firm's name in the reply to line. B, email individuals who have given prior permission to be emailed. C, hire a company to market services. D, tell recipients how to opt out of receiving future email. Hopefully this jumps right out at you. CAN-SPAM Act is the same kind of thing as the Do Not Call registry, but for email solicitation. I always say to my students, this one doesn't work that well if your inbox looks like mine. In any event, the only big thing here is that you are always going to have to tell the recipients how to opt out of future email, and it has to be done within 10 days after they hit that unsubscribe button. Besides that, the only thing else the CAN-SPAM says is that, it has to be clear that it's an advertisement. All right. 27. Augusta National Golf Club has several units on its property for PGA golfers only. This, again, units on its property for PGA golfers only. So what is the rule? The charge for this housing is $30 a night. Is this policy a violation of federal fair housing? Well, I just took the time and really explained this to you. So rental units for golfers only, right, in the National Golf Club. And so it may, right, discriminate against other people. So let's say it's religious and it's not golf. Let's say it's a woman and not a golfer, right? So is this a violation? A, yes, because once a price is charged, the exemption is lost. B, yes, because all housing units must be open to everyone. C, no, unless they are discriminating based on race. And D, no, since golf clubs always have an exemption. This one is a little confusing. I can see you guys picking something else besides the correct answer. But this one, based on race, it didn't even go into all of the other things that I was talking about. Here, private club, discriminating. Can they discriminate in housing? To the protected classes, yes. There's an exemption, right, for handicap, exemption for religion. As long as they don't discriminate in the club itself, they can discriminate in the rental. But what is the rule that I told you guys regarding race? No, races are always no, 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 no. So you will never get an exemption on race. So just throw it out when you see race. 28, which of the following is not true about inducing sellers to sell in certain neighborhoods? Inducing to sell. So what is that? A, it only applies to race. Not true. B, it applies to all protected classes. C, it is activity normally engaged in by a sales agent. D, it is also known as blockbusting. So I'm looking at what is not true. And these students have difficulty with them, but this is what I want you to do in these questions. Just go to each one. Can you say true? Say true, 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 false. True, 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 false. When you get to the false, that's the one that's not true, okay? So just use them positively and say which ones are true, and then the one that's not true would be the answer they're looking for. And so it only applies to race. That's not true because blockbusting applies to all of the protected categories. So you could say there's too many kids moving into this neighborhood. Why don't you sell your house? Okay. But it applies to all protected classes. B, yes, that's true. C, it's an activity normally engaged in by a salesperson. That is true. D, it's also known as blockbusting. That is true. So if you go true, 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 find the one that is false, and then you'll have your answer. 29. John is the owner of a 4-family house where he lives upstairs. He rents out all the other units. He places an ad in the local newspaper for one of the downstairs rentals. The ad is answered by a young handicapped person. The person tells John that he would need a ramp installed in order to be able to move into the premises. The ramp is going to cost about $10,000. John decides that the ramp costs too much and decides not to rent to the person. Can John do this? 4-family, doesn't want to rent to a person that's handicapped. A lot of this other stuff is fluff, 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 fluff. 4-family, can he not rent to a handicapped person? That is the question. Yes, because John would have to bear the cost of the ramp. B, yes, he can do it because John doesn't have to rent to a handicapped person. C, no, because John wouldn't have to bear the cost of the ramp, so he must rent to the handicapped person. And D, no, because discrimination is never tolerated. Please don't pick D, because if you pick D, you do not understand, again, that we have protected classes and we have exemptions, meaning ways to get out of it. So the correct answer here would be B, yes, because he doesn't have to rent to a handicapped person. Now, what is the rule? If you own a 4-family or less, this is called your Mrs. Murphy exemption. 4-family or less, and you don't engage in any discriminatory advertising, and you live there, and you don't use a broker, so no broker, no discriminatory advertising, and you live there, and it's 4 units or less, you can discriminate against any of the protected classes except which one, guys? Race. No, that's a no-no. But then you can say, I don't want any children here. I don't want any handicapped people here. Okay? You can do that. 30. If Mary, a seller, wishes to sell her home that she currently lives in without advertising and without the help of a broker, can she discriminate against others in that sale? Here we go again, right? And that's why I told you this topic, do you know your fair housing categories? So she wants to sell her house she currently lives in without advertising it and without the help of a broker. Can she do it? Can she discriminate? No, discrimination is never tolerated. Please don't pick that answer. All right. B, no, because she cannot sell the home without a broker. Well, you know that's not true. You can definitely sell your house for sale by owner. C, yes, as long as it's not based on race. I like that answer. D, yes, she gets an exception in all cases, since she's not using a broker. Now, what did I tell you about those words? All of the time, all. So I'm going to go for C. Again, there's the race. Since it's not based on race, as long as it's not based on race, yes, she can discriminate. And the rule here is you live there or you are the most current resident there. You're selling your property. You don't use a broker. You don't use any discriminatory advertising, and you're not an investor, meaning you don't own more than 3 or more property. All right, that's it. How did you do on that one? Fair housing can be kind of confusing for students, right? It's kind of like all of these different nuances, and you gotta know them because you can easily fail a test by not knowing the exceptions and exemptions and just picking an answer saying, no, you can't discriminate. And that is not always true. All right, that's it. I'm KJ from the KJ Method. Make sure to come and join us for part 4 of real estate practice. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you know the next time I'm going to upload a video. And please tag people who are trying to pass that real estate exam. I will see you guys next time.